Hello and welcome to another video. Today we'll be taking a look at Makhnovshchina, or short the Makhno movement. We'll take a look at the historical context, the Nestor Makhno, the leader of the movement, ideology and goals. We'll take a look at Nestor Makhno, the leader of the movement, ideology and goals, guerrilla warfare tactics, relationship with the Bolsheviks, social and economic policies, territorial control and some cultural and educational initiatives, decline and exile, the historical significance, as well as some key events and the timeline. So first up, the historical context. Well, the Makhno movement, or Makhnovshchina, emerged during the tumultuous Ukraine civil war period between 1917 and 1921, which was a part of the broader Russian Civil War. The revolutionary upheaval. Well, the movement developed amid revolutionary upheaval following the 1917 Russian revolutions, with various factions vying for control in Ukraine. Influenced by anarchist principles, the Makhno movement aimed for a stateless, self-managed society opposing both Bolshevik and white forces. A book that highlights this is called Anarchist in the Russian Revolution by Paul Avrich. He provides context on anarchist movements, including the Makhno movement. He says, the Makhnovshchina emerged as a radical force in the chaos of revolutionary Ukraine, advocating for an anarchist vision of self-government. Next up, Nestor Makhno, the leader. Well, some background. Nestor Makhno, a Ukrainian anarchist, became the charismatic leader of the movement, advocating for peasant and worker self-rule. Makhno's background as a revolutionary and former prisoner shaped his commitment to anarchism and guerrilla warfare tactics. Makhno led the Revolutionary Insurrectionary Army of Ukraine, known for its effective guerrilla tactics and resilience against larger forces. A book that also examines this closer is called Nestor Makhno, Anarchy's Cossack by Alexander Skirda, which explores Makhno's life and leadership. He states that Makhno's leadership and his revolutionary zeal made him a formidable and iconic figure in the anarchist movement. Next up, ideology and goals. The movement aimed to establish an anarchist communist society emphasizing self-government, direct democracy, and communal ownership. Makhno and his followers opposed any form of centralized state power, including both Bolshevik authoritarianism and white reactionary forces. The movement garnered significant support from Ukrainian peasants and workers, who sought liberation from both external control and internal oppression. The Makhnovshchina represented a radical departure from traditional state-centered models, advocating a vision of anarchist communism, says Michael Mallet in his book Makhno and the Russian Civil War. He also examines the ideological foundations of the Makhno movement. Next up, guerrilla warfare tactics. The Makhno movement relied on guerrilla warfare tactics using mobility, surprise attacks, and local knowledge to combat larger enemy forces. Makhno's forces excelled in hit-and-run tactics, disrupting enemy supply lines and engaging in rapid assaults against better-equipped foes. Despite being outnumbered, the Makhno army successfully defended and liberated large areas of southeastern Ukraine from both white and red forces. A book that examines this is called The Anarchist Revolution, Polemical Articles, 1924 to 1931, by Nestor Makhno. He himself wrote this and he discusses his tactics and strategies. Our guerrilla tactics were essential in the fight against better-equipped adversaries, following us to strike and disappear before the enemy could mount a counterattack, says Nestor Makhno himself. Next up, relationship with the Bolsheviks. The Makhno movement formed temporary alliances with the Bolsheviks against common enemies such as the White Armies, but tensions persisted due to ideological differences. The alliance broke down as the Bolsheviks sought to impose their authority, leading to armed conflicts and betrayals, including a final crackdown on Makhno's forces. The Bolsheviks had successfully crushed the Makhno movement by 1921, forcing Makhno and his remaining followers into exile. The temporary alliance between Makhno and the Bolsheviks was fraught with suspicion and ultimately ended in betrayal and suppression, says Paul Avrich in his book The Russian Anarchist. He also examines the complicated relationship between Makhno movement and the Bolsheviks in more detail. Next up, social and economic policies. The Makhno movement implemented agrarian reforms, redistributing land to peasants and encouraging collective farming and mutual aid. Communities under Makhno's control practiced self-management with local councils, soviets, making decisions democratically. Efforts were made to promote education and cultural development, aligning with anarchist principles of self-empowerment and enlightenment. Next up, territorial control and administration. At its peak, the Makhno movement controlled significant territories in southeastern Ukraine, creating autonomous zones free from state control. These areas served as practical experiments in anarchist self-governments, demonstrating the feasibility of state administration on a large scale. Despite the challenges, the movement maintained basic infrastructure and defense systems, showing adaptability and resilience. Now let's take a look at cultural and educational initiatives. The movement provided anarchist values through education, propaganda, and cultural activities aiming to inspire and educate the masses. Efforts to increase literacy and political awareness among peasants and workers were integral to the movement's broader goals. The Makhno movement encouraged artistic and literary expressions that reflected anarchist ideals and the revolutionary spirit. Next up, decline and exile, the final battles. By late 1920 and early 1921, the Makhno movement faced relentless pressure from Bolshevik forces, leading to significant defeats and loss of territory. Makhno and his remaining followers fled to Romania and then to France, where they continued to advocate for anarchist principles in exile. Despite their defeat, the ideas and experiences of the Makhno movement continued to inspire anarchists and revolutionaries worldwide. Next up, historical significance. The Makhno movement is considered a significant episode in anarchist history, demonstrating the potential and challenges of anarchist practices in revolutionary context. In Ukraine, Makhno remains a complex figure, symbolizing both the struggle for self-determination and the contentious nature of revolutionary politics. The movement's legacy continues to influence modern anarchist and libertarian movements, providing lessons on autonomy and self-organization. Last up, some key events and timeline. 1918. Formation of the Revolutionary Insurrectionary Army of Ukraine under Makhno's leadership. 1919. Temporary alliances with the Bolsheviks to combat white forces, followed by renewed conflicts. 1920 to 1921. Decline and eventual defeat by Bolshevik forces, leading to Makhno's exile. Thank you for listening. See you next time.